Hi, my name is Monioluwa Ogunleye, Master Student in the Department of Women and Gender Studies. Today, I'm going to be presenting on resilient women, Yoruba women in Nigerian economy and society. Now, the Yoruba society can be found in the southwest region of Nigeria in West Africa, and they are constituted in Lagos, Ogun, Oyo, Ekiti, Ondo, and Osun states. Now, for better understanding of this discussion, I'm going to be dividing this period of Yoruba women's life into three sections: the pre-colonial period, colonial period, and the post-colonial period. In the Yoruba pre-colonial period, they operate a flexible patriarchal society that allows women not just to be wives, but to be contributory citizens in their society. As much as men has rights to make decisions in the family and society at large, women also share such equal power with men. The Yoruba society also runs a polygamous structure that allows a man to marry more than one wife. And this structure also gives and afford women opportunity to engage in other activities outside the four walls of the family. It is important to know that in the pre-colonial Yoruba society, there is absence of strict gender categorization as what is obtainable in the West. And this can be seen in the absence of gender pronoun of he or she. Secondly, there's a genderless structure in profession in which allow women to engage in similar profession as their male counterparts. Lastly, there is the interchangeable of first name in which a person, irrespective of their gender, can bear similar name with the opposite sex. As against the backdrop of publications about Yoruba women, which portray them as subjugated, during the pre-colonial period, Yoruba women plays not just as subjugated members of society, but as a complementary role with their male counterparts. And this can be seen with the way they are saddled with the responsibility of empowering and teaching coming generation entrepreneurial skills. And Yoruba women continue to play this role even to colonial and post-colonial period. The Yoruba society also affords women the rights to own properties, and these rights can be exercised through acquiring any property through gift, through inheritance and personal acquisition. Now, during the pre-colonial period, which spanned between 1851 and 1960, the Yoruba women adopted a very diplomatic strategy in engaging with their colonial administration. And that's a combination of accommodation and resistance. Accommodation in the light that where a colonial policy does not favor them, it means resistance. And when a colonial policy favored them, it received acceptance from the Yoruba women. Now, one of the ways that the colonial administration affected the Yoruba women negatively is through the constitution drafting, the constitutional framework. The 1922 Clifford Constitution and the 1946 Richard Macpherson Constitution create an elective representative which excludes women from engaging in political position. This constitution also excluded women from voting. Secondly, the agricultural and educational policy by colonial administration acts as a limitation for women. For instance, in the educational sector, the male children are allowed to engage in technical and professional courses, whereas the female children were restricted to vocational courses with the end game of making them a good and profitable wives. Yoruba women contributed significantly to the Nigerian economy and the Yoruba society in particular through the market structure. And through this market structure, women were able to regulate market prices, which ensure that even the least rich economically upstanding person can afford a minimum standard of living. Also, during this period, women continue the entrepreneurial training of coming generation. So, and thirdly, Why the men concentrate on the production of cash crops agriculture for the purpose of exporting same to other countries and other regions. Yoruba women concentrated on production of food, thereby making there to be surplus food around for everyone. Lastly, with the establishment of industries and factories in Lagos colony, there was a significant migration of men from rural area to urban area, and this means that they're going to leave their wives and children back at home, and women had to take over the position of their husband and take over responsibilities of the men. And we see women in power through politics, economic advancement, and social engagement. And discussing the accommodation of colonial policy, the colonial policy allowed women to divorce their spouse through an affordable and a seamless process as against what is obtainable in their native law and custom. This colonial policy also availed women and young girls educational opportunities and by extension, placement in better job opportunity like clerk, teachers, and typists. Lastly, through the institution of religion, women and girls were able to run away from habitual cultural practices like child marriage and forced marriages. And these are examples of ways that colonial policies were accepted among Yoruba women. In discussing the resistance of Yoruba women, an example that comes to mind is the Egba Women Tax Riot, which was led by Madam Funmilayo Ransome-Kuti in collaboration with working class market women and middle class women. And the goal is to challenge colonial oppression through policy and patriarchy, Western patriarchy. And the tactic deployed was through petition and demonstration. And this resulted in women inclusion in native council authority and the abolition of flat tax rate, which was oppressive for women. In discussing the Yoruba women during the post-colonial period, the Nigerian society gained independence on 1st October 1960, and political power was handed over to men. And from 1966 to 1999, military rule came into power, which excluded women from politics and economic contribution. But despite in 1999, there was democracy came into force, which empowered women to be politically involved and which encourages women to engage in professional courses. And also women became a very formidable force in business. And research has shown that women constitute 70% of the informal sector, which contributes 60% of the national GDP. Despite this tremendous contribution, the women continue to face certain challenges such as cultural restriction, less political engagement, and gender bias, especially when it comes to loan and grant practices. In conclusion, this presentation would like to push for more female engagement in policymaking and implementation, not just as bystander, but important stakeholders. Also, it is important that there are certain cultural amendments on property rights, which will allow women rights to landed properties. Lastly, it is important for there to be provision of opportunity for development, particularly in the area of technology, credit facilities, and acquisition of skills. And these are the references that I consulted in preparing for this research. I'd like this opportunity to acknowledge the significant contribution of Professor Joseph. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. Now it's time for questions.